of Nigerian roads vis-a-vis the Yuletide season. Of course, the state of Nigerian roads is not a news, but it becomes a news during the Yuletide season because of heavy traffic on the roads. And of course, a lot of people will be traveling, going and coming. No wonder some people have tagged the last quarter of the year as the Ember month, and it is seen as a dangerous month. The reason for this is because of the state of our roads in Nigeria. And to do justice to this topic, like I told you earlier on, is this political guru who has detailed information about all that is going on in this nation. Mr. Remi Adebayo, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much, man.
The state of Nigerian roads vis-a-vis the Yuletide. Of course, even before the Yuletide, we've already started hearing about miscreants. Today there was a kidnap at Lagos-Ibadan highway. That kind of a highway, you don't expect a kidnap to happen there. And if such a thing is happening in an area like that, now what becomes of the areas like Aramako Ekiti? What happens to the Igbaraodo area? What happens to the Lokoja, where the flood has affected the route so badly? What happens to those major areas that are linking states to states in this Yuletide? Of course, I'd like to travel to my home base for the Yuletide holiday, and I know so many other people who want to travel. But considering the state of the roads, what do you foresee for this nation with the state of roads?
Thank you very much for having me again. The state of the roads, of course, requires more attention than everything. Recently, we heard from the horse's mouth when the chairman of the Federal Road Maintenance Agency, Engineer Nuruddin Rafidadi, said that the road is it is the road that is carrying the economy of Nigeria, because from the north to the south, east and the west, you know that Nigerian roads can be considered to be more used and to be more plied than when you are talking about a railway or you're talking about air transport. Even water, waterways are not as utilized as we're talking about roads. So it is very, very important that we have to take cognizance of the fact that if not, I don't want to manufacture figures now, but as a Nigerian, you can almost predict that almost about 80% of Nigerians travel by road, either on long or short distances. And if you add that amount, it is still the same road apart from the human commuting from one destination to another. You also think about the transportation of products and items too, food, petroleum products, goods and services. Most of them still pass through the roads. And for a nation that is just almost coming out from the flooding experience, where almost all our roads they were washed away by flood in Bayelsa, in Jigawa, in Delta, and different other states across, even Lokoja here. So you can now see that without a massive reinvestment in having what I will call emergency intervention in the road between now and in the space of about a month, it might be very, very difficult for Nigerians to really move the way they should move. People, of course, you know that Yuletide season is the time that most people want to go and have reunion with their families. They want to go and see the classmates that they have not seen for years. And, it's a joyous moment that everybody look forward to. And beyond thinking about maybe the state of the road itself, there are other associated threats that have to be considered in this. We mentioned that some people are getting kidnapped. Some people are getting waylaid on major roads. Not just major roads, even interstate and even local roads. These are mostly going to happen in areas where you have when people cannot move freely. Bad spots, as we used to call it. When the road is bad, miscreants and criminal elements can capitalize on the state of the road to what do you call it now? To lay ambush for travelers. And it is through that period that they can either kidnap people, or they shoot people, or do all sorts of things to people. So the way it is now, I think the government, not and when I'm talking about government, I'm not just talking about the federal government alone. Apart from the federal government road that are, the truncated roads, we have other trunk-C roads, the one that are managed by states. Of course, we know that the trunk-C roads are almost non-existent today, because the states have hijacked almost all the resources from the local government. So the way it is, both the federal government and the state governments must realign. They must partner. I'm not talking about partnership because this is Nigeria. If you're asking them to partner now, and they're talking about meetings, that one may take about 6 months before we have some meetings again. But it's an emergency situation that we have today, that for people to move from the north to the south, east, and the west, government must do something about the roads between now and about a month's time, before we start having the kind of volume of people that will be moving from place to place.
Yes, Mr. Adebayo, I want to pick you up from one of the points you made. You said government must come together, the states, the local government, let's just put them, the local government, the states, and the federal government. They will have to come together to ensure that the road is in at least a motorable state.
Yes. Before
the Yuletide. Just yesterday or thereabouts, a budget, the FEMA, Federal Roads Maintenance Agency, they presented a budget to the House. They went to defend their budget, and a question was raised on the flooded roads. And I remember the chairman saying that he will need about 100 billion for that. Now he said the money given to them, that the money allocated to them for this year is less than half of what was given last year.
Yes.
Considering the inflation, even the money given last year did not cover all the routes. Now it's being slashed by half. Are we now saying that some roads will be left pending despite the crisis on ground? And then if you say some roads will be left pending, which roads? These are the questions that we need to ask our leaders.
Yes.
Which roads will be left pending? There are some realistic things that need to be done urgently, like you said. The Yuletide season is on ground. Are we going to patch the roads, and when a trailer moves, it breaks again? These are the questions that we need to ask our leaders. But I still want you to come in a little. If the government is showing such insensitivity at a period like this, slashing the money needed, and then he has requested for 100 billion, I expect that immediately action should be taken if we are going to meet the period of the Yuletide. But it looks like this 100 billion being demanded for, it will still take another 5-6 months because I don't think they have even passed it yet. It was just a discussion before it is passed. And so how do you think that the government can help the masses, especially and particularly about this end of the year period? The end of the year is a period of mass movement.
Yes.
Some people want to relocate, some people want to move into another place, some want to move to their houses, some want to settle down. And these are so many questions on the hearts of people. Do you think the government is so sensitive to come together to help us at this period in time?
Thank you very much, ma. And that's why I mentioned that there should be a kind of a collaboration. And like I said, I'm not asking for them to meet at the table to be doing bureaucracy and bottlenecks to do this now. What I meant by that was just that the state knows which are its roads. And the state roads are not even better than the federal roads, if you look at it across boards. In fact, federal government's roads are almost better. And they are the ones that determine the road networks of the country. We have about 195,000 kilometers of roads in the nation. And of course, these are the roads that were built in the 1980s and in the 1990s. Even
60s. We have some in the 60s.
And we have to accept the realities. There is economic realities that we have to be sensitive to. The FEMA boss, that's the MD, Engineer Rafidadi, told the Gershom Bassey-led chairman committee on FEMA, I think that was on Monday, that this is the interestingly, it was even Gershom Bassey himself that raised the issue of the flooded area, that the roads are flooded. What are we going to do? Of course, as at that time, they were sensitive to what may happen in about a month or more now. But people will be moving en masse. People will be going back to their home states and hometown to go and celebrate together with their people. So how government will respond to, then we have to accept one reality. You mentioned that this agency asked for, I mean, the chairman himself said that the envelope budget for 2022 was 70 billion.
Yes.
And this time around, they are,
billion.
is it up to 35?
Less than
Maybe 35 or 31, something thereabout. And
less.
he said even with when they had 70%, it was not enough to do much. And now, you mentioned the issue of inflation. You know what you bought last year, and that spreads across the cost of not just food but also other things in town. So how government will go about that one is what I know. But the reality I think we are seeing is the fact that the economy is not too right. Not just FEMA. I remember that the Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, similarly came to that. In fact, he was begging the parliament that, please, I don't know how I'm going to handle, I think he mentioned the issue of managing hate speech or something like that program. So the nation is broke. We have to know that the nation is broke. Look at our budget funding. Most of them are coming from external budget, external debts.
Yes.
And the 2023 appropriation is also, we have a volume of our budget going back to debt financing. So things are not proper. Things are not right as it is now. And why? We all know what is happening in the international market. I mean, what do you call the economy? The rate, what do you call the dollar? The rate of, what do they call this now? Barrel per, the dollar. How much? The rate of
dollar,
pump price.
Yes, a pump price.
So everything is going down. And government is trying. At times we look at government and say government is not responsible. Government is it. Go and check how much people buy fuel, even in our neighboring countries. And you compare that with how much people buy fuel in Nigeria.
Where we produce it.
We produce it. Unfortunately, we produce, but we do not refine. So we have our self-inflicted problems. We know we have our injuries. But the reality is, let's look on the dynamics that are available today. What is the reality? The reality is that we do not have that money. The reality is that we have roads to fix. Curiously, the emergency money that we need now to fix the flood affected areas is even more. It's even more than the national budget that you want to give to FEMA itself. But thankfully, we had the chairman of the committee, Senator Gershom Bassey, saying that they will try to facilitate how that money will be released to NEMA. So we are hoping that there will be a way that money, it might not be at once. Even if government is releasing like 20 billion today, I'm sure it's going to make some impact.
A lot of
definitely. So an appeal should go to President now, or the federal government, that this is an emergency. When any disaster happens anyway, it's a natural disaster in this way now. So beyond NEMA,
it was mostly orchestrated by the carelessness of the government.
Oh.
So they should still come back to it.
So what I am saying is that yes, there's a part where you can make government to be culpable in its responsibility, laissez-faire attitude to things. Even this flooding we are talking about, NIMET, an agency of government, warned one state that there will be flooding, but none of them made any meaningful provision towards that. We didn't have safeguards, and that's why we got to this place.
Is it the same government that will now repair the roads for us?
They have to, but they know that they have to repair the road. It's their responsibility. Government is not shying away from its responsibility. It is, I also there's the word I always use. This, I better pass my neighbor mentality that you have. The big men in Nigeria mostly don't feel affected until something touches them directly.
Yes.
Most of them. Go to Kaduna Abuja road now. You won't see most of them. Even as bad as it is now. And when you are seeing them in a convoy of security men, fully armed security. But How many of us that have that luxury? How many of us can go where you are going? You don't even have one
Do you even have a car,
anybody
not to
going
talk
about.
of a pilot?
No,
A pilot
so
car.
so those are the issues. We have to look at it. That government, it is government's responsibility. We are not at war. Nigeria is not fighting, and Nigeria doesn't have what we call a civil war today. So people cannot be restricted from commuting from one destination to another. So it is the responsibility of government at this point to respond to the immediate needs of the people. Engineer Rafidadi put it very well, that we are talking about people that are in IDPs. We are talking about people that have been rendered homeless. We are talking about people that need emergency health intervention. But how do you take it to them if you don't fix the road? If you don't fix the road, how do you do that? How do they get drugs? How do they get mattresses? How do they get food? So government must know that it owes the people that responsibility. And basically, the law that we operate as constitution says that the responsibility, the basic responsibility of government is to provide welfare and security. So road is part of our welfare and security. And government cannot play any role in denying Nigerians that access. We have got, and this is not an isolated case. It affected certain, certain states, and this is not the time for anybody to politicize that. Okay, this is the area, because you mentioned that this is the area where you should give given priority. No,
when 10 states are affected and you removed
I sincerely, I don't think government will want to do that, because doing that, of course,
they did that. They attempted it.
I know.
While comparing some states to some states considering the effect of the flood.
I'm sure you are mentioning the comment made by the Minister of Humanitarian.
Yes. Look at the title. Look at the portfolio. Humanitarian. And yet complaining that some people are less affected.
I think the minister has been tackled on that, because when we have disaster, like when you say people die, me for long I said that when people die, like when you go to Lekki during the NSAS shooting, and you said that, okay, people die, people don't die. And I asked, my own point is not about who died and who doesn't die. My problem is that, was there shooting? Should there be shooting at that place in the first place? So, was there flooding in that area?
Should there be flooding
in that area? And when there is flooding, should we now discriminate?
No, now determined by aggregates.
No. So the minister has been taking on that, and that is fine. So we do not need to say who falls into the first 10 or who doesn't fall. The truth is that the people, the victims in those communities are Nigerians, and they do not respond to your statistics of the first 1 or 10. What matters is that they need help, they need assistance at that time, and who will respond to that? When you have a communal, what I call mutual disaster, everybody is culpable. Then who is going to help? There are things that happen, there are disasters that happen that doesn't discriminate about party. This is not about APC, PDP, Muslim, Christian, North, South, Wala. This is a mutual, this is something that spread across. And government must respond accordingly. Whatever A is entitled to, B should be entitled to, C should be entitled to.